And good afternoon, and welcome back to Discuss with Russ. This is episode 8. I am Russell Rivera, founder and president of Voice Wealth Management, and my guest this afternoon is Summer Rose of Star Organizers. Our topic this afternoon is using this crisis to organize your space and your mind. For those of you tuning in today for the first time, the Discuss with Russ series is focused on helping you get through the crisis and start thinking and planning for what the world might look like after the crisis is over. Obviously, some of us have started to leave our homes and see each other face to face again, at least in small groups. But aside from that, we want to do it to help you in the longer term, to anticipate possible responses in society's behavior so you can be most prepared to succeed. Voice Wealth Management, my firm, primarily works with entrepreneurs, young professionals, and their families to help them get the most out of their money. Who wants to get rid of your money? While I'm a chartered financial analyst and certified financial planner, many also see me as their personal CFO and financial therapist, recognizing the psychological power of money in addition to using short-term and long-term planning to help you get the most out of every dollar you earn and use. Now on to our guest, Summer Rose. Founder of Star Organizers, was born and raised in Miami, Florida, and has been passionately organizing for over a decade. She currently resides and works in New York City and travels to organize clients' homes all over the country. Summer not only helps clients create effective strategies for home and office, but she also helps create effective strategies for your life. She teaches clients how to effortlessly follow these strategies so their spaces and lives are consistently clutter-free. Before we begin the interview, I wanted to just take care of a couple of housekeeping issues. Of course, there is a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Please use that for asking any questions, and we will take those as appropriate throughout the program. And this show is being recorded, and we'll tell you how to get a recording at the end of the program as well. And with that, Summer, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me to be on, Russ.
Great. Glad to have you. So one of the things I discuss professionally is that in creating a financial plan, one needs to get their finances organized. As a matter of fact, not that I'm trying to tout myself, but it's actually like my basic financial planning package is called Get Me Organized. So people need to get their finances organized, know how they use money, know where their money is and the like. You deal with helping people organize their living spaces. So what does that process look like, and what's usually their reason to get started?
So most people who come to me, they all have different reasons for getting started. Sometimes they're living with somebody else and it's causing a lot of fights and disagreements and arguments with the person they live with because their space is too cluttered. Sometimes they've inherited an estate from a parent or a grandparent who had passed away, and now they have all of this stuff that they have an emotional attachment to. So they know they want to get rid of it, or they know they need to, but it's very difficult for them to let go of it. Sometimes they've moved into a new space and need to learn how to organize it, how to set it up. Sometimes they're just fed up of living in a cluttered mess and having an overflowing closet and feeling like they have nothing to wear.
This sounds like the fight I go through with my wife all the time. She's the well-organized one with all the space and all of that. I'm a little less so I hear you. So when you're working with somebody, what does that process look like, right? Like, so I understand, for me, it's listing everything you have and then kind of understanding where everything is and then trying to reorganize it basically into something so that the client can understand where everything is and how to go from there. So for you, you're obviously dealing with maybe different limitations, different space. You may not need to know everything everybody has, but maybe you do. So share with that me.
Yeah, the process is really similar. So when we're doing someone's home and we're decluttering and organizing, we take everything out of the drawers, the closets, the cabinets, taking an inventory of everything you have. Just like you want to know an inventory of their finances, you want to know every bank account they have, every stock, every investment, where they have all their little hidden money. We want to know all of their clothes, all of their items, their books, their papers, where they have hidden stuff. Do they have stuff under the bed, in the top of a closet, shoved behind a couch, in a different room, in a storage unit? Maybe they have stuff in their parents' home or in a friend's basement. We've seen it all. And so we want to take an inventory, just like you do with their finances, of all of their physical belongings. And then once we see what they have, then we can start to go through and determine what they need, what's adding value to their life. So just like in your finances, if a certain stock is not adding value to your portfolio, maybe you want to sell it. So just like with your clothes, if you're not wearing something and it's just sitting in your closet taking up space, then you want to get rid of it. And if it's designer, maybe we can sell it. If it's not, then let's donate it or give it to a friend or get rid of it in some way.
So we previously, before you and I did this live, have discussed that, like money, so much of this process is emotional. How so, and what do you do to deal with the emotions of cleaning up and organizing one's living space? And it's not just one's living space. In some cases, it's decades of their life. We're all familiar with Hoarders, the show, and maybe the concept, and some ways how much of a mess we all think they are, at least in terms of their living space, and then maybe emotionally too. So how do you go through that process?
Sure, most people do have an emotional attachment to most of the items that they possess. So that attachment can either come from a financial attachment, maybe they paid a lot of money for it, or even if they didn't buy it, it was a gift and someone else paid a lot of money for it. So they feel like they don't want to just throw that away because they're throwing away money. And so it's really looking at what's the reason they're holding on to it. Are they holding on to it out of fear or out of scarcity? Are they holding on to it because they really love the thing, or out of guilt because they feel bad getting rid of it, whether it's guilty what it's going to do to the environment, or guilty because somebody gave it to them and they feel bad getting rid of it if it was a gift, or maybe they inherited it and now they feel like if they get rid of this item that used to be their grandfather's, they're getting rid of their grandfather's, or maybe it means they don't love him anymore. But really that's not the truth. And it's looking at how can we preserve the memory of that person, or the memory from whatever this item reminds you of. Maybe it was something from a special birthday or a wedding or a special occasion, something you wore on a certain occasion, but it doesn't fit you anymore. You were a lot younger, you were a lot thinner, or maybe you were a lot bigger, and it's just something that is no longer serving you. So it's looking at how can we detach from that emotion and keep the memory from that event if we want the memory, if it was a positive memory, or how can we let go of it, especially if it was a negative memory, and let that go.
That reminds me of what the specifically the last thing about old clothes or something, like the skinny jeans phenomenon.
Yeah.
What was that? Was that Sex in the City? I don't know. All I know is I have a pair of those too. So I think I bought that, like, it was like the first cool jeans I bought when I was like 24, and here I am 42, and it's like, I guess I still have those. They're about 20 pounds ago, but that's a whole different issue. So, one of the things you've discussed with me that's kind of unique is that you also integrate coaching techniques into dealing with the people you work for. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes. So when I'm in someone's closet, a lot of things always come up for them. People like to share their whole life story with me. When we pull out a certain item from their closet, I often get a story of when did they buy this? When did they wear it? What's the memory attached to this thing? And then people will often tell me about happy times in their life, sad times in their life, difficult times, whatever they're going through now, whatever their goals are. Sometimes people's closets are full of business clothing, and maybe they used to work in a corporate office and now they work from home and they're an entrepreneur and they work in yoga pants every day. And so sometimes it's letting go of that old identity that they used to hold on to and fitting a wardrobe for your current identity, for what's going to work in your life now. And so I'll work with people on identity, on limiting beliefs, on grief, on whatever is really coming up for them.
So we kind of discussed that a lot of your philosophy, at least coaching wise, it came from the fact that you've been very involved with Tony Robbins. I haven't been. I obviously know we all know there's some sort of, I'll call it cult of personality that's very very strong there. And you've been involved and went to your first Tony Robbins thing at age 6. So aside from, I guess, your parents dragging you, What made you latch on to that and find that particularly useful?
Sure. So they didn't drag me. They asked me if I wanted to go, and I begged them to take me. I really wanted to be there, and I loved it. I thought it was really great. I learned so much from it, and I continued going as I got older. And I would travel the world and go volunteer for his organization and get the opportunity to work with thousands of people all around the world with all sorts of different issues coming up. And then I further went to other seminars and studied NLP and neurostrategies with Steve Linder. So that's where I really learned most of my coaching and all the techniques that I use with people when working with them in their closets.
I mean, we've only touched the beginning of the stuff that you are, and we'll see how much we get into, because now you're talking about NLP and mind control and hypnosis, and maybe that's a little bit too strong for the program, but let's get a little bit back to organizing and see where time allows us. Getting into a person's living space, obviously, with everything we're dealing with the crisis, is difficult.
Yes.
So for example, in New York City, particularly Manhattan, and high-rise buildings aren't allowing guests. Doing what you're doing, you're in somebody's apartment. It's not like you can socially distance. So how has your business, at least on the organizing side, been affected during this crisis? Has it been on hold? Where does that stand?
Sure. So it was on hold in mid-March when everything first started, and we really didn't know what was going to be happening in the world, and we really had so much uncertainty. So people weren't allowing others to go into their homes. So I was doing some virtual organizing, helping people clear out their closets themselves, giving them tips, giving them suggestions, FaceTiming and going through their stuff. And then as the city started to understand the whole situation a little bit better, now people have decided to leave the city, a lot of them, and they've gone and quarantined in other places, in their second homes or in new homes that they purchased. And they're having me go and box up their life, pack it all up, and then either hire a moving company or FedEx everything to their new home. So that's something. So far, I haven't found a building who has not let me in. They're allowing me into most buildings. I hear that there are a bunch of buildings in New York who are being stricter on this, but so far I haven't encountered it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can go in there and pack up everything for them, FaceTime them, determine what they need, what they don't, getting rid of and throwing away all their old food from their kitchen, whatever they're not going to use anymore, what they don't need in their new place. And we can declutter that virtually. And then I can have the movers take it into their new place, and then I can unpack it into their new place. So if they do come back to New York, it will all be set up for them and ready to move in and ready to start living. They don't have to come back to an apartment full of big boxes. Or if they're moving out of state, I can either go out of state and unpack it for them there, or they can unpack it themselves, and I can just supervise the move on the New York end so they don't have to come back to the city.
Very, very good. Very interesting. But you were also doing something else with the crisis, in terms of pivoting. And I'm not sure whether you were doing it as a money-making enterprise to kind of keep yourself going as an entrepreneur who was really doing in-person services, which obviously you've found a way to make yourself useful in that business now. But you were also, when we first met, you were kind of pushing yourself as doing something else. Was that meant to be a money-making enterprise, or just for public service? And tell us more about that.
Sure. So in the beginning of this crisis, I heard that there was such a need for PPE, personal protective equipment, for hospital workers, healthcare workers, and governments, and people really needed masks and gloves and gowns and other personal protective equipment. And I heard from a lot of friends of mine who are nurses, people who worked in hospitals, friends of mine in different industries where this was really such a strong need, and people were not protected and they were putting their lives at risk. So I got involved with helping provide these hospitals with the PPE that they needed. So at first it was just to help out, and then I saw that there was a potential business opportunity there. So I was exploring that and seeing what I could do to give back to my community and to the world and to help keep people safe.
Very, very good. So now we've touched on like all the different phases of what summer does. So, you know, um, so every day, every week, we're slowly starting to see our lives inch back towards what some would call normal. In Long Island, where I am today, they've officially, I guess, started phase one opening. New York City, Manhattan, and whatnot could be next week. Every day we're hearing about new things that are potentially going to open, whether it's in our area of the world or somewhere else in the country or the world. But it's going to obviously be a long time until things are as they were, and some things will everybody will feel as comfortable as they did in February with doing certain things, with doing everything. So it's time to start thinking, obviously, what changes will really come out of the crisis in the short and long term. And so how do you think people's approaches to organizing from a personal and business situation will change outside of the obvious social distancing things that have been put in place and however long those are in effect?
So I think right now, most people are spending the majority of their time at home. We're told to stay at home, shelter in place, not leave. And we have all of this extra time that we're not going to social events, we're not commuting to work or to go out to eat. And so we have so much extra time at home, and it's a real gift to take advantage of that time and be productive. And one of the ways you can do this is start organizing your home yourself. So start with one area of your home, especially the people who are working from home. And if you're going to be working from home for many more months, depending on what your industry is and what city you live in, we're home for a while. And if this is where we're going to be spending all of our time, we really want to be in an environment that makes us happy, that makes us smile, that feels good for us, and that creates a more productive work environment. So I would suggest to people is figure out where your working space is going to be. Try, if you can, to not have it be in your bed, whether you set up a little table or an ottoman or a little small desk at a couch, or you work at your dining room table, or a lot of people in their kitchens, they've got bars that they can sit at, which are great working spaces. High top bar is one of my favorite spots to work at. So find an area that you can dedicate to work. And if it's an area that you double as an eating table, then you can clean that off each night and separate your work from your home life and from your personal and family life. But try to have that dedicated space so that once you go into work mode, you're more productive.
You bring up something that I think is going to be one of the things that people are really going to be thinking about, in terms of separating work life from home life. We discussed on this program previously how a study found that people working 3 hours more in this time than they were before. I believe there was a New Yorker article that came out today talking about the future of work and telework and telecommuting and all of that. And then even going back in that article, there was a little anecdote about Charles Darwin and how he had to mentally prepare himself, even though he worked from home, by walking around his yard every day just to get himself mentally prepared. So in whether it's not, obviously organization has something to do with it. How does one, when there is no physical distance between their working space and their home space, mentally make that transition?
I think one thing is turning off distractions. So if you have a TV on at home where it's not anything for work, then you've got to turn that off. You have to turn off your personal notifications if your phone's going off all the time, or your iPad or your computer, it's always going off with your text messages, your notifications from friends, your social media. If you're going to keep checking all of that all the time, then that's going to really distract you from your work. And so you want to set aside specific work times and really be focused on that work and zone in. Otherwise, the time that it takes to switch tasks every time, that time adds up, and it's just not as efficient to work that way.
Sure. And so delve into a little bit all the things that you've learned and all the things you bring to the table in dealing with people, whether it's your coaching practice or your organizational practice, I guess I'll call it for this for this purpose, into helping people do that, right? Because it's one thing to organize your space and clean it up and do it that way, but how does that help people kind of organize their mind to prepare themselves for the day that lies ahead, the hours that lie ahead, in that sense, to the best of your knowledge and expertise?
So a cluttered desk is a cluttered mind, and a clear desk is a clear mind. So just like all of the physical stuff around you, it really affects your energy, and it affects how you work and your space and whether you can focus or not. If you've got 25 random things all over your desk, different post-its and notes and papers and coffee mugs, and you've got plates piling up and socks on your table and random things that don't have anything to do with work, if you have all of that surrounding you, maybe kids' toys everywhere, and you've got you and your partner and your children's stuff all over the place, that's really going to distract you from your work and from what's most important. So if you clean up your physical space, that's going to allow you to have a clearer mind to focus on your work.
Yeah, I that seems like the most obvious answer. And then I look at my kid, he's 11, and his room is never tidy, and we don't force him to do it, and I don't know why. And my wife's the neat one, so it's, and I'm the one screaming, it's messy, it's messy. Yet every morning he goes, and I guess it's because he loves the school that he's getting now so much. He goes in and sits down and does all his work and is completely focused and gets everything done and comes out and is ready, happy as a clam and ready to do the rest of his day. So what do you attribute that to? Maybe I'm not trying to do psychotherapy on my kid or anything or coaching for my kid, but I'm just like, it's not as simple in my experience anecdotally as cluttered space, cluttered mind, right? So for me, like one of the things that, sorry, I'm talking too much, but it's like, if I put something away, I know where it is. In my mind, it's organized. Someone else might see that as something completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's totally possible to work in a mess. And there are people who can zone in on their screen and just focus on exactly what's in front of them, this little box. And it's just like kids who play video games. They are just zoned in on the TV screen or the computer screen, and that's all that they're looking at. And it doesn't matter if there's clutter all around the room, because they're not focused on that. So it's really about where you put your focus. Mm-hmm. I believe that the clutter in the room affects your energy and it can affect your focus, but it's definitely possible if you put your mind to it and you zone into that screen, he's focused on his screen and on his schoolwork.
Fair enough. That makes sense. So, we've talked kind of how the business situation will change and kind of the office space situation will change. And I know you've dealt with office spaces as well. I think, from people who have gone to work in offices, how do you think, if they are called back into the office, how do you think those spaces will be reimagined? And do you think it's how long do you think that change might be in place for, and how well do you think it'll help people actually work?
So I think that it's really going to have an effect on the way people work, because right now offices are reimagining their desk setup. A lot of offices had open floor plans. They had tables pushed together, desks pushed together, and people were working in very close proximity. And I think that that's great for teams. It's easier for communication. You can just turn around and ask the person what you want to ask them. You don't have to send an email and wait for a response if they're on the other side of the office, or if one person's home and one person's at work in the office. Some companies are looking at having half of the company come on certain days, half come on other days, or 1 week and then the next week. That way they have less people in the office at a time. I think it's definitely going to affect the productivity, the cohesiveness of teams to work together. But I think that people will find ways to work around it, and they'll find ways to still be productive, produce great work, be creative, and we'll figure it out.
Fair enough. I guess the question is, further on, do you think these changes will end up, what do you think the time change will be? So in the sense of, A, do you think it'll be immediately additive in terms of productivity, creativity, et cetera? And do you think that people will either move back towards the prior model or will accept um, the change in productivity if it happens to be lessened, or will there be a clamoring for a return to closer to the old model as people realize in-person communication, in-person things are also important to having a productive, creative workplace? And where do you think all those fit in?
I think that some companies, like we've heard Twitter, and I think I read Google, they're saying that all of their employees can work from home indefinitely. So certain companies like that, they've just taken the position that we think that our employees can be just as productive and we care for their health and safety. So we're going to allow them to work from home if that's what makes them feel comfortable and safe and keep them healthy. So some companies are going to find that their employees can still work that way. And I think it really depends on the person who is working for the company. So we all have different natural attributes. So some of us are more introverted, some are more extroverted, some work better together as teams, some work better alone, some want to work quietly behind a desk by themselves, some need to bounce off ideas with other people. So I also think that it depends on the type of person you have working and what the role they're working in for that company is. So some people are actually going to be more productive if they're working from home than if they work in an office. They might be more distracted in an office. There might be too many people to talk to, too many people distracting them, bothering them with every little thing. So some companies might find that there is more productivity when there are less people in the office to interrupt them. So I think it'll be by a case-by-case basis and person by person and company by company.
And that's fair, right? Like I've heard people say this is like the introvert's paradise. Some of them have been never been more productive, but at the same time, right? I could see an issue, and again, this might be a management question. If you let your introverts stay home and your extroverts stay in the office, right? Like you need that balance and bounce back between introverts and extroverts, right? Like that would be important to creating a better product, to creating a more creative product, creating a better whatever it is, whether it's a tech product like you use Google or Twitter, or for everyone. So I think that's you're right. I mean, there's just going to be this balance and this shift that's been going back and forth between telework and back to work and back to telework, and I don't know if we'll ever find the answer, but there's a lot that could be going on there. I don't know if you have any more to offer.
Yeah, I think that the teams definitely need both the introverts and the extroverts to give their opinions and their perspective to make a tech product better or whatever that company is doing to provide a better service, because the more different types of perspectives they're getting, the better that product will be. And they can still get those perspectives from the introverts while the introverts are working from home. So maybe the extroverts have a whole conversation about it. They have an in-person meeting about it. And the introverts send an email and they put their 2 cents in, because the introverts don't want to be in that meeting anyway.
No. And being an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, who knows what the heck I am, but nonetheless. Sometimes it's just leave me the heck alone, and sometimes it's life of the party. Great. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I think you're right. The future of work is A, always in flux, and B, always being tinkered with, I think is clearly true. They've, open office plans they're finding aren't working in some ways and are working in others. So there's always that, or the non-dedicated desks in offices are not working in some ways and are working in others. So, while neither of us works in an office with other people and does this on a daily basis, here we are speculating on it. That's great. Summer, I want to thank you for your time today. I'm glad we were able to have this conversation. Before we wrap up, how can people contact you?
They can reach me at summer@starorganizers.com or find me on any social media at Star Organizers, or visit my website, www.starorganizers.com.
And again, I forgot to ask you if you had any final words or any question or any final things that you wanted to offer to the audience.
I would say take this time, be productive, use your time wisely, whether that's learning a new skill, reading a new book, working out at home, enjoying time with your family, enjoying the time with the people you live with, and really see this time that we have right now as a gift and an opportunity to better your life instead of focusing on the fear and the stress and all the things that you can't do. Think about all the things that you can do and how great this time is. And a lot of people are really worried right now, and they're really fearful of getting sick, and that just puts more stress on your immune system. And that's one of the things that can cause people to be sick, is it weakens your immune system. So I would say instead focus on what you can do in this time, whether that's getting organized or learning something new, watching videos online. There are a lot of college courses you can take online. There's a lot of online programs in the personal development world, or about any topic you're interested in. I bet there's an online course about it. So go take this opportunity, instead of binging Netflix and eating junk food, to go learn something new and enjoy the quality time that you now are forced to have with those that you love, with whom you live with.
Great. And once again, you can reach Summer by emailing her at summer@starorganizers.com. I got that right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I do want to thank her for joining us today on Discuss with Russ.
Thanks for having me on your show, Russell.
Of course. You can reach me at russell.rivera@voicewealth.com. That's Russell, RUSSELL, .Rivera, RIVERA, @voicewealth.com, or call me at 646-630-0980. For those of you watching live today, we will be sending a follow-up email with the link to the recording, which you'll be able to view at www.voicewealth.com/blog, or you can view all our videos on the Voice Wealth Management YouTube channel, and those will both be up in about a week. So early next week, we usually get the prior week's episode up. Next week, on Wednesday, June 3rd, 2 p.m., we will have psychotherapist Andrew Kaplan on to discuss how he's been helping people through the crisis and discussing issues that can get in the way of people's financial success. And I'm sure would be an extension of the conversation you and I have had today, Summer. So that'll be exciting as well. 2 weeks from today, on Wednesday, June 10th, we will have Adam Citron of David Off Hutcher and Citron to discuss how the crisis is affecting family law matters, including divorce and child custody. And on June 17th, we'll have Ross Karp of 3P Insurance to discuss the changing world of life and health insurance as a result of coronavirus. So if you'd like to register for any of those webinars, you can reach out to me again at russell.rivera@voicewealth.com and check your email inboxes for registration emails. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.